It's time to wake up and pray up here on the Finding Faith and Losing Sleep podcast. I'm Wes Easley, one of your hosts at Loafin' It over on Twitter. If Twitter is still such a thing anymore, it might be X or whatever it is. And I have with me all the way from up north in Yankee Land, it is Pierre and Michelle. How are you two doing today?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing well. Not really Yankee Land. Like, we're not in New York, which is where I think Yankees, but I get where you're going.
Land. Yeah, we are.
If you want to go back to like the Civil War days, sure.
We are. It's Confederate. It's Confederacy down here.
I mean, that's fair given some things that are taking place in the country, but we won't go there.
Well, we might have to go there at some point. Hey, I was thinking about this. Like, I gave out my Twitter handle at Loafin' It. Pierre is at Peewee31 over on Twitter. Michelle is at GoPackGo 911. Is that 411?
411, yeah.
At GoPackGo 411. I don't know what the Twitter handle is, Pierre. That's your job.
At Finding Faith Pod is the Twitter /X. X as well. You got to toss an X. It's been X for a little bit now, so yeah. Twitter /X.
My favorite is when he says X every time he crosses his arms
in
an X.
Wakanda forever.
Yeah, you know how it is. What do you guys think of Twitter or X nowadays? I know I still see Pierre on there every so often. I know I'm on there every so often. I think I get my news from there, Pierre. It feels like that's how I read a newspaper now. And this is something, by the way, our podcast is about things that keep you up late at night. It involves faith a lot of times, or just our walk in life. The three of us are Christians, not theologians. I guess we are kind of theologians, but very amateurish. Is that right? I mean, I could say we haven't been to college to get our theological degrees, but we are theologians. Everybody who talks about Christianity or religion is a theologian. Am I right?
I don't know.
I don't know.
That's a dangerous term. I don't want to give the wrong perception to those listening and tuning in.
We just have opinions.
Okay. Opinions about stuff. But that is where I get my information from as far as like newspapers or stuff like that goes. And I would like to say I use reliable sources, and maybe unreliable sources as well, just to see what's out there. But what do you guys think about X?
I mean, I honestly mostly use it for sports stuff. So, you and I do like a DFS pod as well for daily fantasy sports, and like most of the news breaks first on there. So that's why I mostly use it, is to get news on like lineups and things that are coming out. I don't actually dive into like real world news outside of sports. A lot of ads, it feels like these days.
Yeah.
A lot of bots as well, which is kind of, shifted, where you just get like folks liking or replying that don't seem to be real people. That's just my experience with it. Michelle, do you really dive into the Twitter machine still?
Nope. I never have, really, honestly. I'll be on there every once in a while, but I'm still, as Olivia would say, I'm old. I still use Facebook, but mostly I use Facebook just as like my memory, because I like the memories that come up. So I usually just kind of use it for that, and to post like new stuff to come up in my memories next year or the year after. So unfortunately, I don't use social media like Instagram, Twitter, like all of that really very much at all.
How can people get a hold of you on MySpace, Michelle? How can they?
Shut up, Wes.
So here's
MySpace.
Hey, mine was kind of fire too. I'm not gonna lie.
Huh?
My MySpace was kind of.
I'm telling you, I love the music.
I used to switch girls in my top 10 just to get reactions.
That is 100% true. I guarantee you.
We're learning a lot of things about Pierre tonight. There was a talk before the podcast about some things, and we're learning a lot about Pierre.
Hey, I tell people, if you knew me then, you believe me now. I mean
that. I never had a MySpace thing. I don't know about any of that. So where do you guys get news from or headlines from? Where do you guys get that? Because that really is. I mean, X, Twitter is where I get my headlines from, besides the things that are just sent to my phone from some application I have on there that I don't even know that I downloaded. It just was always on my phone. And so it's like Newsbreak or something like that. And it just tells me headlines. But it's really, really built upon me. Like the algorithm has me really dialed in there. And I'm sure Twitter does as well.
We don't.
Yeah. Like, I'll get it from her parents if they're in town.
Yeah.
I don't watch these.
We're
I thought this
oblivious.
That's right.
I thought this show was kind of about current events and stuff. Is it not?
I mean, it is, but you catch a win. Like,
you're
people
gonna hear
talk.
it. Yeah.
I don't need a news outlet to know what's going on. People conversate, whether it be at church or in our life groups or again amongst family that kind of talk about it. And then from there, you can always just kind of, if you're interested enough, Google to get a sense of what actually they're discussing or talking about.
Yeah, if I knew everything that was going on, I'd never sleep. I'm sure.
Right.
Like, I sleep very little these days anyway, so that would probably make it worse.
I think I have this right, and you guys can fact check me. You know how we are on this show. You can always just fact check me and see if I'm telling the truth on something or not. But I believe MySpace, the day MySpace ended, was the next day Facebook started.
Oh, I don't doubt that a bit.
I don't think that's true.
I do think it's true, and well, and that just goes into like the CIA or the FBI were doing both of them at some point, just to be able to get more people onto a different platform, because they already had everybody's information on MySpace. It was kind of becoming dead, and so they had to do a different one, and everybody just rolled into that one. It was all it's all about just getting information is what it's about.
I do remember rolling over, and what's funny is, like, I don't know, a couple of months ago, I actually logged into my MySpace, and lo and behold, it was still there.
I know that's not true because I had both, and it was in college. So when Facebook first started, I want to say it was in 2004, because I would have been.
Ooh, you're better at that than I am.
I would have been a junior or senior when Facebook started, and it was only for like college students. Like, you had to be like in a university to even have it, and MySpace was still going on. So maybe when they went public and it was more for the general public versus students, that might have been the case, but not the initial launch, because Facebook was students only. And I believe it initially started at Harvard, was the first.
I think
because
that's right.
I believe if you watch the movie, I can't remember what it's called. There's a movie about it. And I think Harvard was the first university, and then it kind of branched out to other universities before it actually went public to those that weren't associated with a university.
I still have an AOL email address. No, I'm just kidding about that. Hey, as we talk about MySpace, Facebook, and all that, it leads us into our discussion here this evening, or our topic about change. We're going to talk about change tonight, and it's change is one of those things that I don't know. I don't go into them really fast and furious a lot of times. Change, the definition of it is to make someone or something different, to alter something or to modify it, to replace something with something else, especially something of the same kind that is newer or better, substitute one thing for another. So when I think about change, though, it really seems like it's hard for me to change. What do you guys think? Is it hard for you guys to change too? Or is it one of those things that you're just like, oh boy, I can't wait to change? Because my wife, it depends. I really think my wife likes to change. I know she likes to change the furniture around in the house. She loves to do that. And I bet you if it was up to me, I would have the same chair in the same place my entire life. That's just where it goes. But she loves to change that stuff.
I am not the best with change. I don't love it. I understand it's mostly inevitable, so I give into it. It's not in my nature, really. Which is weird, because I don't know. I like change for some things and not for others is probably the best answer.
Her and our daughter are pretty good at changing clothes. I can tell you that much.
Here does the laundry at the house. You can tell that.
I do my own, but yeah, change is difficult when it comes to things outside of material, like especially if you're looking at spiritually, I feel, physically, even like those that like try to like exercise, work out, it's a lot harder to get in shape versus getting out of shape. And so it's really tough for sure.
Oh yeah, it is. And that's interesting. You say you do your own. I do my own laundry as well. I do. I the girls can do their laundry or whatever, but I do my own laundry. Just it feels like I've lifted a burden is what it feels like.
I lift the burden off myself because you don't know what to put in the dryer or what to hang up, and it becomes stressful. So I'm just going to do my own, and y'all can figure it out for yourself.
I have no idea how khakis like a khaki pair of pants, a tan pair of pants, and red shirts go in the same, and it's supposed to go in the laundry at the same time or the washing machine at the same time. I don't understand that.
They shouldn't.
They do it. They do it for me. I was told they do, so maybe that's why they got that little pink.
Won't be khaki for long.
I legit do reds, oranges, and sometimes dark purples all together as one load.
A change. You may need to change that, Michelle, because it's all going to blend together. You're going to have tie-dye everything is what you're going to end up having, but that's okay. That's all right. That's okay. Change. This is from what is this from? This is, I was looking at different things about change. This is from a Harvard Business Review. All right. Harvard Business Review. And one of the things that it makes me sound smart whenever I say that, but I don't understand a word that they say. So I don't know about that. But they say you could kind of blame our history as a species for not liking change and why change is so hard for a lot of people. If you think about what it was like until a couple of past generations, people stayed in the same city. They did the vocation of their parents. You know, everything just kind of stayed the same. You even inherited like your parents' house. But I don't know that that's necessarily what's in the plans for all of us anymore. It feels like there's more change on the horizon for everybody than what it used to be. And I believe that. I think that that's true.
Yeah, I agree. Like, just think about how much his life is changing. So you look back at like older days. For one, like we just talked about, news outlets. There was a time where you didn't have TVs and radios, so you wouldn't know what was going on. You look at different ways of like transportation. You wouldn't be able to get to certain places, because cars were different. You maybe weren't able to fly at a certain point in time, and like even myself, so I'm going through a major change with my job. So after 17 years, I think it was, I got let go for technically no reason. They were doing some reductions. I think honestly, I made too much compared to some of my peers, but it's a pretty big change when you've been somewhere for 17 years. Like I'm looking back at my like resume, like the latest resume I had, and man, it was so basic, just out of school and not much history at all. And just having to update that and just looking at the differences between kind of the experience that I had then and all the things I've learned over these 17 years with different tools and different technical skills, et cetera. It's a big difference. It's a big change. The job like market itself has changed quite a bit, where it's a little tough right now, honestly. And it's a lot of people, looking for a small amount of jobs. So you really got to make sure you're standing out. It's weird. It's really weird. It's difficult, but you can look at it from a bright side, which is I'm trying to as well. As sometimes change is required in order to move forward to your next step in life.
And I think what we found is that all too often God kind of has to slam that door for you. Like, okay, you're taking too long. This isn't the plan, so I got to kick you out of here in order for you to get down the road where you need to be. And I think we're all a little, from time to time, a little resistant to change, and things can happen, and you'll be like, I don't know why that had to happen. And then, that hindsight will give you that answer. Often you'll be like, oh, okay, I get it. If that wouldn't have happened, then all of these other things couldn't have happened the way that they did, and I wouldn't be where I am. But it's hard to see and sometimes remember that you're going to have that hindsight at some point, but until you get there, sometimes it can be really challenging.
If you need to, Pierre, you could throw my name around.
That'll help.
I already throw your name around.
I'm sure you do. I remember one time when we moved into the house that we're currently in, it was a minute and a half away from work.
Oh, wow.
Convenient.
Oh, wow. And my entire, route and everything right here on this side of town. Man, I had it made, it felt so everything was just right there. And it's how I liked it. It's how I loved it because you guys know my past and how I moved around from house to house to house, all those things whenever I was a kid growing up. So now here I am condensed in this one little area. Everybody knows my name. I can't walk down the road or, go outside without people saying, hey to me, stuff like that. And it really feels good. And I really, really liked that. And that was cool. And then work changed. They,
Yeah.
they shut down the warehouse. The closest warehouse that I could do things in was about an hour away in my brain. An hour is what it was. So I
Yeah.
had to drive an hour there. I had to load a truck, drive an hour back, run the route, drive an hour back, unload, and drive an hour back home. You went from a 3-minute commute, essentially, to
Yeah.
a 4-hour commute.
Mhm.
Wow. I tell you what, I couldn't get over the hump. I just couldn't figure it out. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. I'm going to tell you one book that really helped me out. And there's a little cartoon out there and everything like that. It's kind of in that same, facet of life as that Stephen Covey and stuff like that. But this one is Dr. Spencer Johnson. Who Moved My Cheese is what it's called.
Oh yeah, that's such a good book.
Oh, it's a cool little book, isn't it? And it's about
Right.
how different people react different ways. And you got the two different separate people. Both had two groups in there, and one group was like just sitting down, going, "Wait a minute, somebody moved my cheese," and they just waited for the cheese to come back. And then you had another group that said, "Oh, somebody moved my cheese," and then they aggressively went out to go find more cheese. And it just kind of it helped me. Somebody gave me that book and had me read it, and it really helped me just go, okay, man, you got to go get your cheese, dog. That's how I was thinking about it.
I've never read that book.
It's good. You would like it.
Yeah,
It's good.
I don't like many books. I'm that guy when folks are like, "So, has anyone read this book, by the way?" Like, don't look at me. Like, I'm not going to be the one person in the room that has read the book. So you can just ignore me sitting there, make eye contact with someone else, and ask them if they read the book, because there's a pretty good chance I have not read the book.
It's a pretty easy book to read.
There's a little YouTube like a early 80s, late 70s cartoon too, Pierre. So I'll send you that a little bit later. I sent it to Josh Larkey the other day, our buddy Josh Larkey. So I'll send it to you as well. So there's people like that in the world as far as change goes, and how they react to different kinds of change. And in this article from what I say, Harvard Business Review, is that what I said?
That is what you said.
I'm surprised I could remember that, but it's a change arc. And Pierre, I hope that we can put this in the episode description over on the Finding Faith, Losing Sleep podcast Twitter handle. What is that? Is that
the podcast Twitter handle is at Finding Faith Pod.
Okay, well, that was easy. The change arc, though, people want to know, and when they first hear about change happening, whether that's at work, like a boss comes in and says, "Hey, we got some new policies. Hey, we got to change some things up around here," or whether that's a job calling and saying, "Hey, you're no longer employed here," or I think it could be a lot of things, though, like news from the doctor, right? I don't. What other things kind of change in life like that? News from your children?
Yeah.
Yeah. That can be a thing. There's just a bunch. I mean, IRS news, bill collector news, your parents or a good friend. Sometimes your pastor, like he can get news from anywhere, any source, and depending on how it relates to you, can really rock your world. And you can get news that's equally as bad from someone else that doesn't relate to you, and it doesn't shake you as much. But I think when it hits closer to home, that kind of, I don't know, that determines how you're going to react to the news that you're getting.
When change is first proposed, at the bottom of this arc, if you could just see an arc like a half a circle, people ask the question, what does this change mean to me? Why is this change happening? And then the other question is, what will it look like when the change has been made? And we try to gather all that information in order to begin to assess like the different reactions that we're going to have, or the risk or the difficulty involved in the different changes that's going to need to take place. And so we all just ask those questions. And I think they're good questions to ask. Will it be difficult? Will it be costly? Are things just going to be weird? Difficult means that you just don't know how to do things. Or how hard is this going to be for me to do, I think is what it is. Costly means what will it take from me in the things that I value? That could mean money, or it can involve like different things like invisible valuables, identity, like I talked about here. I was no longer just sitting right here in my little comfort zone at work. I had to travel 4 hours now. Power, reputation, relationships, and weird just means this is going to be weird. This is unnatural. That's not that ain't how we do it down here. That's what I want to say.
Do you think that I was just sitting here thinking about this. Do you think that we're resistant to change because it takes our control away?
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we like patterns. I like patterns. I like to just do the same thing. I was gonna say the routine I have every day is unbelievably smooth, right? And so when you start throwing different things in the way, I'm like, all right, that ain't how I do it around here.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of why change happens, though. I think sometimes, God just wants us to step out a little bit, get out of our comfort zone. A lot of big things don't take place within your comfort zone. You got to take a chance. You got to take a risk. I think you see that, throughout the Bible. You look at Moses when it came to like Pharaoh. He's like, no, not me. You just got this wrong. We talked about it. Like he asked, multiple times, like, wait a minute. So no, because of this. No, because of that. And, ultimately he was, who God chose to go to Pharaoh and request to let my people go. And there's so many different other scenarios where that was the case, where someone was uncomfortable with something and, God kind of had to nudge them or reassure them that, they were called to do what they were called to do, even though it wasn't comfortable.
Yes, I agree. And sometimes we have to do that. And we got to have faith that God is there with us during some of those uncomfortable changes. And we just got to know that it's a God that's never changing, and it's a God that's always going to be there for us, and he's promised that for us. So I think that we can take solace in that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's weird. God never changes, but he sometimes makes us change.
Yeah.
Hopefully for our good and his glory, right?
That's right. He knows the plans he has for us, right? Plans to prosper.
People begin to accept change whenever their mindset kind of changes about those difficulties, being costly or weird, or just going to be just too hard, and start thinking about change being easy and rewarding and normal. Once they kind of accept that, I got to go find my cheese again. I can't just let somebody steal my cheese and just sit here and not try to go out and find it again, as that book said. And that could take some kind of triggering. It could be a mindset. And I want to remind everybody, you've changed a million times already in your life. Things have happened. You're no longer the person that you once were. At some point, you were a little baby and everything, and things have changed over your life. And whenever you get put an obstacle in your routine, when an obstacle gets put there, just remember there was an obstacle put there not too long ago, and today is still going on. You can look at it like, I've already overcome so many hurdles. I know I can overcome this one too, and especially if God is there as your strength.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it can be tough though, depending on that change. And I don't know, like it's hard to think about, because you never know what's going to happen. But certain changes, I think, are easier to come by depending on where you're at in life, if that makes sense. So things that I go through now as an adult, in my 40s, I have enough hindsight I can look back on to find peace and know and trust that things are going to be okay. Whereas, things that took place when I was young, in my 20s, I probably blew out of proportion. They probably weren't as overwhelming as I thought they were, but in my time and how seasoned I was then, or non-seasoned, I guess you could say, it changed the way my reaction was.
Perspective.
Yeah, correct. Perspective is a good word for it. And I think that's going to happen with many people. Like, depending on where you're at in life, what you've gone through is going to depend on how you're going to react.
Mm-hmm.
So certain people can still be in the same situation. Age doesn't necessarily matter, but depending on how life has kind of helped you to grow throughout, or if you even chose to grow and change in the first place, is really going to have an impact on how things continue to happen. Because we know in this world there's going to be trouble, right? We were told that. That's a definite. With that trouble, how are you going to react? Like, are you going to continue to have perhaps the same behavior that you had as a teen or as a young adult? Or are you going to grow from the troubles that took place to handle those circumstances better as you've gotten older?
I said this today to somebody. They were in my way. I'm just gonna be honest with you. They were in my way. I couldn't work. They were in my way, and I was just standing there, and I was just piddling, and I was waiting for them to finish because they were pointing in the direction that I needed to go. And so, after they were done, I was going to be able to do what I needed to do. And the lady turned around. She's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Was I in your way? How long were you waiting?" I said, no big deal. As long as I got my computer here, I always got something to do. She said, "Well, next time, just tell me." And I said, I look at it the way I've looked at it like this: the Lord will put me where He needs me for whatever reason, and so I'll just wait. I'm just waiting for Him to move you. That's what I said. But it opened up a conversation, and we'll continue that conversation whenever I see her. But it just opened up a conversation for that. And I remember whenever this warehouse closed, and I had to do that whole 4-hour commute thing. I didn't know why, and to be honest with you, I was flabbergasted. I just, like I said, it knocked me down. I was having to wake up really early in the morning then, and just never getting home at night. It was really weird. And then I got to know some of the guys at this new warehouse, right? And Wes is gonna always be Wes, where I always got an evangelistic mindset. That's just the gift that God has given me. I reminisce with people I don't even know, and I never meet a stranger kind of a person, right? Yeah. And so I was talking to these guys, develop a relationship. And this is all God's doing, not my doing, but it was these couple of people that I'm particularly thinking about are yoked, Pierre. Yoked. Okay. Yoked is very strong is what they were. They go to the gym. Yeah. Jacked. I am not. Okay. I'm just not. And I'm sure I was grumpy because, as you could tell, I had to get up early, not a lot of sleep, stuff like that. And this one guy, he was telling me about his marriage and that he's just going to get a divorce. I said, "What are you, a wimp?" That's what I said. That's what I said. I don't know if I was relying on the strength of God or the stupidity.
And then your whole life flashed in front of you.
No, not when I said it, but when he turned around and said, "What?" I said, "Well, I don't understand why you would do that. You're such a big, tough guy, and yet you're going to take the easy way out of this. Just something like that. I don't know. Don't quote me, okay? But it was something like that." Then the other guy, at a different point, he kind of said the same thing, and I said, "You're scared, aren't you?" He said, "Scared of what?" I said, "You're just scared. Big old tough guy like you sitting there scared of everything, and you're just going to sit there and take this easy way out again." Both of those marriages, I don't know that they're still going on today, but they were going on when I left there because they both reunited with their wives and stuff like that. And I was like, and honestly, I was like, "That's why you sent me here." Okay, all right, I get it now. Fine, I get it now. Can we please get the warehouse back towards the other side of town?
Yeah, mission accomplished. Movie back.
But the point is, we don't know the reasons why. But we still have to use the talents and gifts that God has given us, no matter where we're being sent, no matter what we're doing. And look, I know that's hard. Sometimes it could be it could be easier said than done. I share that story with you, not to brag on myself, but just to share it with you that if you're in that same kind of circumstance out there, that maybe trying to figure out where you can get more cheese, where you can get it, or trying to figure out how this could be a positive. I didn't know, and I didn't know at the time that this was going to happen. And whenever I said those things, I certainly didn't know what I was saying, but I was in the right place at the right time for God's purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And if change has come to you and it's out of your control, and you've done everything you know you can possibly do to keep that routine, then it's not you changing it. It's something else changing it. It's an outside source. And if we believe that God is in control of everything, and if we're going to trust that God has our best interests at heart, then let's just go ahead and say, God, put me where you need me, at the right place, at the right time for your glory. It makes life a lot easier for me now. It doesn't mean I always remember it whenever I'm sitting in a hospital room or something like that, with the different things that we've just been through as a family here recently. Doesn't mean I always remember that. And it's a lot easier said than applied. But it's still something that I need to have my mindset on.
Yep.
That's a good word. I agree. And again, like you say, though, it's really tough in certain moments. Hospital rooms is definitely a big one.
Mm-hmm.
It's just people's sorrow. And I know, there's like a lot of folks that stand by like our local stores, and they have like different signs, that they're in need of help. And I want to say it was the Glorify app, maybe a week ago or so. It touched on like compassion versus pity.
Mm-hmm.
And really made me think like how many times like you go past someone clearly struggling, no idea why they're struggling, but your initial thought is more of a pity standpoint, and you just kind of feel sorry for them and don't do anything about it, versus having a compassion, like Jesus did, and
seems you're equal, really
doing something like some type of action based off that compassion that you have. It doesn't necessarily mean giving them money. Sometimes you're giving them time and having a conversation, learning their story, how they got there, et cetera. Sometimes it is, giving them, something that you're hoping that can help. But oftentimes you don't know the end result. So like you got to witness, at least for a little bit, those marriages reconnect and continue. There's also going to be times where you're put in situations where you don't know what the end result's going to be, but you still are in that situation to maybe plant a seed or to bring hope, personally to that individual or to that situation that maybe you're the one shot that person has in hope. Maybe other people are going to drive by or walk by and ignore that situation, but God has you there in hopes that you're the one that's going to, intervene and try to change the situation some and show compassion versus pity.
Well, and I might get this wrong, but I heard on K-Love that there was this guy. It's kind of like listening to the Holy Spirit and that nudge, like sometimes where you just have a feeling like you need to go do something. And this guy was talking about he was at work and his boss was an atheist, and he had that nudge to go invite him to church, and everything in him said, why? Like, he's not going. He's an atheist. I might get fired if I go and invite him to church, but he did it, and the boss turned him down, and he didn't understand it. And fast forward like a few years, and he is preaching, and after his sermon, a guy comes up and he introduces himself, and he's like, you don't know me, but I need to tell you my story because you're the reason I'm here. And he was like, excuse me? And he was like, something along the lines of, he was looking for work and somebody asked him if he'd ever laid tile. And he was like, I did my bathroom once. Sure, I could use the money. Yeah, I can lay some tile. So they had him go to this man's office, and he's like, you came in and I was behind the desk laying tile when you came in and invited your boss to church. And he turned you down, but I went, and it's because of what you said to him that is the reason that I'm here. And so it's something along those lines. And it was just super powerful because you don't always know why God's having you do something. Like he thought clearly it was that he was supposed to invite his boss to church, but his boss had absolutely nothing to do with it. It was the man behind the desk that he couldn't see. So sometimes even when we think it's a failure, when God's leading us a certain way, it could be that we just didn't have the right perspective. So you never know who's watching or who's listening. So.
Yeah, I like that. That was a good one. That was a good one, Michelle.
It was good on Caleb.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But yeah, no, that is good. Pierre, if we had a commercial break, like right now, I think would be a great commercial break, and then we would come back and kind of wrap the show up.
We don't have a commercial break.
It was a dramatic pause.
But we can plug, you can email us at finding.losingsleep@gmail.com. You can leave a review if you like over on any of the listening platforms. We're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name them. There's a few others I think I'm missing, but we're out there. So thanks for listening. If you want to show your support, leave a review, slap us 5 stars if you don't mind. And again, email at findingfaith.losingsleep@gmail. You can also text us through one of the listening platforms. When you go into the summary of the show or the episode, gives you the option to send us a text if you'd like to do that as well. Now back to our regularly scheduled programming.
That's a change in our podcast.
The change, yeah. No, hey, and I read up about like people leaving reviews and everything. First of all, it only takes like a minute, not even that. If you have it just right there on your iPhone or anything, you could just next time you stop it for a little bit. No, I was going to say stop at a red light. Don't do it then. Keep driving. Keep both eyes on the wheel, both hands on the. But next time you stop, just hit a review. Just real quick. You can do that in just a matter of minutes. And what it does is it helps get the podcast out there to other people. And we've said it many times. We don't collect any money for this or anything. We actually pay money to be able to have this go out to the world or wherever, just because we want to be able to do our part to be able to help change people's lives. And so that's how it goes out there. And so if you could just leave a review, let us know. We would love to hear from you too. Just, hey, you guys are doing a good job. That'd be great. But it helps get the podcast out there in front of more eyes or into more ears. And if it's helped you, hopefully it can help somebody else as well. I think about Paul and his idea change. And you guys, what was Paul before he became a Christian? Do you guys know?
Saul.
He was Saul. And what did he do for a living?
He was persecuting Christians, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
So, here's one of the weird things about Paul that I've often wrestled with at night, which is what this podcast is about. He was doing God's will in his mind beforehand, and he probably was doing God's will for a long time in his life. Mm-hmm. And at some point, maybe he started denying what his heart was feeling. I don't know. I don't know why he continued to do the things he did, other than he was very comfortable in his skin. And he knew what his routine was, and he knew what the right thing to do was, and that was to arrest Christians, persecute Christians, to quit letting this Christianity spread. That was his job as a what was he, a Jewish Pharisee kind of guy, a Roman kind of Jewish Pharisee guy. That's what his job was. And it doesn't feel like he liked change all that much.
True.
And then he got hit on the road to Damascus with that big bright light, and his life changed, and Jesus spoke to him, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Those kind of things. And you could read that in the book of Acts. But I just think about him wrestling now with Christianity and with his old self and all the things that he knew was right. I think about how hard it was for me to walk in the faith after all the old habits that I used to have walking in this world. Mm-hmm. It's so hard. and it's hard for people to come out of the world into faith. But, there are some people who struggle with different religions too. Maybe they were raised, I don't know, Mormon, Catholic. Maybe they were raised Christian. They're going to something. Maybe they were raised Muslim. And there's all these different, habits that people have. Yeah. And now they're starting to find out something new, and that's hard to do. That's really hard. And I think about Paul doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for anyone. And you have it, like you mentioned, you have it in different religions. You have some Christians that change, where they don't believe because something took place in their lives. You have some that were atheist or agnostic now do believe because something changed in their life. And so I think that's a good reminder to just be careful, I guess. I'm not sure if be careful is what I'm looking for, but just be cautious that life doesn't toss you lemons to the point where you're trying to make apple juice. It's going to be tough. Like everyone goes through things. We've all gone through things from health wise to death to job stuff and financial obligation things. We've all gone through things, but don't let it change you for the worst, I guess would be the thing, because sometimes that happens. Like you let tragedy or something awful just change you completely to where you're unidentifiable as the person you used to be, and it's not for the good. It's different to be changed for the good and be the light, and be love versus changing and becoming that darkness and that hate. I think that's a good decipher on kind of the changes, in our opinion, from God versus not from God. So if you feel yourself changing, for the worse, that change may not be, a change from God. And I would, recommend you pray about it, get into your word, get into your Bible, or, get into folks you trust. Sometimes it's, those trusted voices that can help you out of situations as well. But don't let change, ruin your goodness, your light, your joy, and things along those lines. Easier said than done, I'm sure, in certain situations, but everyone's been through those valley type moments. So make sure you're changing for the good.
Yeah, 'cause sometimes because we like to hold on to things sometimes just because it's our comfort zone. Like it's what we know, the fear of the unknown sticks in there, and it's a lot easier to just stay with what you know versus jumping out and taking the chance and changing, even though it could be so much better. We like to stay stuck sometimes. I think it's just human nature.
And don't get down on yourself either. If you fail at continuing to carry your joy with you when things change, or you're trying to make and create new habits, don't get down on yourself if you fail once or twice. I'm not saying to continue to try to fail or that you want to fail, but don't be too hard on yourself either, to the point to where you stop trying to change, or you stop trying to continue being your old self into this different environment that you're having to go into.
Yep, I agree. And I think, like you mentioned with the conversation you had with the gentleman and divorce, like sometimes things are going to be hard. It doesn't mean you give up. It doesn't mean you quit on things that get difficult. So just keep that in mind as well. But I also wonder, like, what if one of them was supposed to change, Wes, and you came in and you it's like, I won't go down that hole. I won't go down that hole.
See, I went when you got that thought. Seriously, like while you were talking about what you were saying, I was like, oh, just think if one of those wives had prayed for their husband and the divorce and everything, and then I come walking into the picture.
Right.
Wes said, "Not today."
And once again, that is not to brag on anything about me. Not one bit. And I hope our listeners know that. Thinking back to Paul, and I don't know that there was a tougher dude on himself than Paul was. And I'm so glad that he was an open book. And in Romans 7, he just talks about his old self wrestling with the law and all the different things that were in the law, the Old Testament, I guess we could say, and trying to figure out this new way of life. And he was doing this so people would understand his struggles and not beat themselves up if they were struggling themselves with making changes, right?
Yeah.
And he says in verse 14, for we know that the law, or the old way, is spiritual, but I am of the flesh, sold into bondage to sin. For that which I am doing, I don't understand. I'm not practicing what I would like to do, but I am doing the very thing I hate to do. But if I do the very thing I do not wish to do, I agree with the law, confessing that it is good. So now no longer am I the one doing it, but sin that dwells in me. Isn't that weird? Like he says, I ain't even doing it. It's just an old habit. It's just sin
Yeah.
dwelling in me doing it. I can't stop it. It just feels like he's just so frustrated, right? For I know that nothing good dwells in me, that is in my flesh. For the wishing is present in me, but the doing of good is not.
Mm-hmm.
What a guy.
He knew. I mean, and there's people right now, like, how many years ago this was that Paul wrote this to the Romans. There's people today, 2025, that are facing those same struggles.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're doing things they do not want to do, and it feels uncontrollable.
Mm-hmm.
So just note that, these type of struggles have happened, along the way. And I think recognizing that is a good first step, right? Like recognizing I don't want to do this. I got to figure out a way to no longer do it because I don't want to do it. So that's a good first step.
Yeah, he's not in denial. That's not, he's past the denial step. He understands what he's doing. Verse 19, that's Romans chapter 7, verse 19. For the good that I wish, I do not do, but I practice the very evil that I do not wish. But if I'm doing the very thing I do not wish, I am no longer the one doing it, but sin that dwells in me. I find then the principle that evil is present in me, the one who wishes to do good. For I joyfully concur with the law of God in the inner man, but I see a different law in the members of my body, waging war against the law of my mind, and making me a prisoner of the law of sin, which is in my members. Wretched man that I am, who will set me free from the body of this death? Thanks be to God, through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then, on the one hand, I myself with my mind am serving the law of God, but on the other, with my flesh, the law of sin. Boy, Paul, you just quit beating yourself up. And then he focuses right there in chapter 8, verse 1, the very next verse. There is now, therefore, no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, he just gets done beating himself up over and over again, talking about he's just a sinful man, a wretched man that I am. And he just feels so bad about himself standing before God and doing the things he doesn't want to do. And then he reminds everybody who's reading this that there is no condemnation for people who have clothed themselves with Christ. And that's our eternal only hope. And that's what we really have to remember is there are some people that are struggling with so many things out there that don't want to, that just don't want to. They don't have that hope. And for me, that hope, to give them that hope is my job. And that's what we come here to this podcast for. That's what we walk around in our shoes for. That's what we live our lives for. And I hope that those are encouraging words, not from me, but from Paul, the Apostle Paul, who desires all men everywhere to hear these words and they can know that struggle that he had. And if we call him an apostle, if we say he's Paul and we hold him in high esteem, then you should hold yourself in high esteem too, because if he can struggle with things, you can too. As long as you're trying to do the right thing, like he was.
I can, I do. So it's a good reminder. And I mean, all Paul's letters, and I won't go through it all. But I even wrote AI is pretty big right now. I'm sure you know that, but I think it was yesterday. Like I just typed in an AI, like what would a letter from Paul? So it's crazy we're talking about Paul today. What would a letter from Paul to the world today look like? And it gave you a pretty long thing. I'll send it to you, and it's pretty neat. It's you kind of use some of the same terminology that AI try to fit it into what Paul would say, and I could actually picture that being in the Bible to some extent. It's pretty cool. I know it's not in the Bible. It's just AI, but just the thought process of it still resonates with what happens today.
All right, that was my closing thought. Do you guys have anything else to add, or is that putting a nice little bow on things? Or
no, I mean, it was good to get back behind the mic. I know we've been out for a bit. Again, a lot of change has been taking place in our household, and But good to get back. Hopefully, these are listening. Thanks for listening.
Yes.
We got a bunch of recent German listeners, so thank you to Germany. If you leave a review, maybe try to translate it to English, because I probably won't be able to read it in German. But thanks to those listening anywhere, in your cars, in your homes, at work. We truly appreciate you allowing us into your lives a little bit, and obviously we just pray and hope that it's helpful as we talk through some of our own struggles, opportunities, joys, wins, changes in our lives, that you can also see it yourself.
We've got a lot going on outside right now.
Hey, I can hear it, and we will go ahead and we will wrap it up on the sirens in the background. They're coming after you guys.
We had somebody standing outside of our house a second ago, so it was a little unsettling, but I don't know what's going on. We live in a great neighborhood, so it was highly unusual.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, we'll let you guys check that out, and I'll just remind the listeners to pray for us just like we pray for you.